Hello and welcome back to World 360. Aya Yousef was fired from her job and subsequently divorced by her husband after she was filmed by a colleague at a work event on a Nile boat in Cairo without her permission. She could be seen belly dancing, or more specifically performing baladi, an Egyptian folk dance, alongside male staff on a boat. The video drew backlash among Egyptian conservatives who called on the authorities to take action against the teacher. Yousef, a native of Mansoura city, reportedly told journalists that the incident made her contemplate suicide. According to local media, she said, "My life was destroyed because of the video from an unscrupulous person who tried to tarnish my reputation and brought the camera close to me only to show me in a bad manner." 30-year-old Yousef had taught Arabic for years at a primary school in the Kalia Governorate in the Nile Delta, according to a BBC report. In a recent development, the Education Directorate of the Kalia, the administrative division in which Yousef lives, returned her job as an Arabic language teacher in one of the experimental language schools in Mansoura. It is not confirmed whether her husband has retracted his intent to divorce her. However, several women's rights activists in Egypt expressed support for Yousef after the incident, including a top NGO called the Egyptian Center for Women's Rights. Now, it's worth looking at how women are treated ever since the 2011 Egyptian Revolution, which contributed to the Arab Springs, a regional movement in which people in various Middle Eastern countries overthrew their dictatorial governments. The 2011 Egyptian Revolution, which saw mass protests across the country, led to the ouster of President Hosni Mubarak, who had been in power for 30 years and intended to pave the way for reform and democratization. However, Mohsen Hassan, executive director of women's rights organization Nazra for Feminist Studies, who also participated in the 2011 Egyptian protests, wrote a research paper in 2015 on how violence against women has in fact increased in Egypt. Since 2011, due to the high number of women in the public space, violence against women and women human rights defenders has increased. In March 2011, army officers beat, detained, and electrocuted 17 women. Among them, 7 were strip-searched, threatened with prostitution charges, and forced to undergo virginity tests. Other sexual harassment, sexual assaults, and brutal beatings by army and police officers have been documented within a climate of rampant impunity, she wrote. In terms of political representation, she noted that women were not appointed ministers in the first post-2011 cabinet, and the first constitutional committee had neither women representatives nor did it portray quote-unquote fair rights for women. Hassan basically suggested that Egypt's transition to democracy has for a large part ignored women. Even an Oxfam report published in 2012, a year after the revolution, noted that in spite of equal participation in the protests that led to the ousting of Mubarak, Egyptian women have been marginalized throughout the transition and change process. Let's fast forward a bit. As of 2020, there were still major gender gaps in the African country. Egypt ranked 134th out of 153 countries in the Global Gender Gap Index. It ranked 140th out of 153 countries in women's economic participation and opportunity. Only 18% of the working age women are participating in the economy compared to 65% of men. Before we conclude, it's also worth talking about a controversial draft law approved by the Egyptian cabinet early last year, which seeks to limit women's legal rights. The draft law, which is a personal status bill, would require women to get the consent of a male guardian to get married, to register a child's birth, or to travel abroad. It also gives fathers priority in child custody matters and allows fathers to prevent mothers from traveling with their children. The Egyptian Center for Women's Rights, the same NGO that pledged support to Yousef, had called the bill repressive last year, saying it takes us back 200 years. It wasn't just this NGO, but about 50 other women's organizations in Egypt too, who had published a statement at the time of the bill's approval last year, saying that they outright condemn it. This is ironic given the position of women in ancient Egypt. According to academic Janet H. Johnson, women in ancient Egypt could acquire and own property and enter into contracts in their own name, unlike other ancient societies such as Greece, in which women were stripped of legal identity. Now, since taking power in 2014, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has declared his support for Egyptian women on multiple occasions. However, human rights organization Euromed Rights claims this is a strategy to harness women's support against the Muslim Brotherhood than a genuine commitment to gender equality. It also alleged that this rhetoric is a diplomatic tool to attract international support. Thank you so much for watching. This is Pia Krishnankutty for ThePrint. Do subscribe to ThePrint and follow us on social media.